right, Lockmort, let's talk about one of your beloved games. Kingdom Come Deliverance.
That is indeed one of my beloved games.
Yeah, one of your beloved games, a game you adore so much. Your most anticipated game of 2025.
Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. I love Kingdom Come Deliverance. This one will be even better. Hello, it's me again. Great news. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is here, and it's magnificent. Go play it now. Alright. By now you've probably already seen a dozen reviews of this game and heard how amazing it is, so I'm not gonna bore you with the same details everybody else has already talked about, and probably explained much better than I ever could. It's very simple. If you liked Kingdom Come Deliverance 1, or any Bethesda game for that matter, there's a very high chance you will also absolutely love Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. It does everything all those games do, but much better and then some. Like I mentioned before, it's Oblivion or Skyrim for masochists. However, if you're somehow still on the fence or not sure what you're getting into, let me try and explain what this game does for someone like me. Now, this is all subjective, of course, so it's completely fine to disagree and think otherwise, but over the past decade, there have been only 2 games that have made me feel what I'm currently experiencing with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. But to figure out why that is, like always, we have to start at the very beginning. So this time, that takes us to the beautiful region of White Orchard, because it is right here where we first meet the ever-grunting Geralt of Rivia in The Witcher 3. The funny thing is that both The Witcher 3 and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 start out as somewhat of a buddy cop movie. Geralt and Vesemir team up in the search for Yennefer, which brings them to White Orchard, while Henry and Hans are teamed up to deliver a letter to Lord von Bergov in Troski Castle. In both games, these initial team-ups basically form the tutorial areas. Geralt and Vesemir are stuck in White Orchard, desperately trying to solve a griffin problem before they can move on, while Henry and Hans are trying to escape their captors without getting into trouble with the locals. However, it doesn't take long for both teams to split up, and this is where either game actually begins. For Geralt, the bulk of the game takes place in war-torn Velen, a province situated in northern Temeria. Geralt roams the countryside, chasing after rumors and sightings of Ciri, his adopted daughter. Now this takes you all over Velen, through numerous little towns and villages, where you easily get distracted by other quests and NPCs with their own issues. Before you know it, you're solving werewolf problems, close down monster nests left and right, take on various Witcher contracts, and find treasures all over the place. The beauty of it is that it's all integrated into the main quest. The ongoing war with the Nilfgaardian Empire is always present in the background, and the looming sense of danger you get from talking to the various NPCs makes sure you never lose track of your main goal. The stories Geralt comes across in Velen are those of loss, betrayal, and murder. The war has touched everyone you come into contact with, and it seems like there are almost no innocents left. Everyone seems to have their own dark little secrets, including your quest givers, and nothing is what it seems at first glance. While Geralt travels all over Velen, the mystery and wonder rolls all over you. Exploring dark forests and misty swamps while on the back of your trusted steed Roach gives the player a sense of adventure where anything is possible and something new, exciting, and dangerous lurks around every corner. The landscape of Velen is vast, and the draw distance is huge, so you can actually see where you might end up. The war has completely ravaged the area, so whether you're traveling through fields where the bodies of men who were hanged swing in the wind, or through forests filled with monsters, you always realize that this place has a rich history, and you're witnessing the aftermath of something horrible that just occurred. While you're exploring, the beautiful soundtrack makes you feel like you're really there. Riding through little towns and villages and seeing the NPCs go about their usual business is something incredibly immersive, because no matter how mundane it all seems, the sense of dread is always present.
Henry, our hero Henry, the fellow who helps his fellow man. Henry, reliable Henry, he gets the job done the best he can. Ho, 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 I can't hear you in the back.
Meanwhile, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 offers the same amount of exploration and adventure, but the tone of it all is vastly different. Just like in The Witcher, Henry travels all over the countryside, at first on foot until you find your trusted steed called Pebbles, through various little towns and villages where you'll easily get distracted by other quests or NPCs with their own issues. What sets it apart, however, is the atmosphere, at least in the first half of the game. Everything is more colorful, saturated, and seemingly happier, filled with hope and aspiration. From a blood-drenched Henry happily turning in a quest, to the lush green forests inviting you to explore them, all the way down to the beautiful soundtrack that conveys a sense of fun and wonder. That is what it looks and sounds like on the surface. But underneath is an equally dark tale where danger lurks around every corner and optimism is often misplaced. Unlike the first game, the war hasn't really touched this part of Bohemia yet, so the villagers, craftsmen, and local lords you meet are more occupied with their own personal problems, not yet realizing the impending doom that'll soon rain upon them. It's kind of like traveling through Velen, but just before all the slaughter takes place. That doesn't mean that the side quests are any less dark or somber than in The Witcher. It won't be long until you have to deal with kidnappings, murder, betrayal, and corruption. Even the side activities, like various fistfights all over the countryside that ramp up in difficulty, or the wonderful treasure map hunts that guide you to new armor sets, are an example of how both games put exploration, player agency, and adventure at the forefront. However, where these games completely differentiate is of course the fantasy element versus the simulated realism. While Geralt has to deal with various monsters, ghosts, and the occasional human enemies, Henry only takes on bandits, poachers, and wolves. On the surface, this once again seems like The Witcher has a bigger sense of danger or even horror to it, but the major difference is that Geralt is a supernatural witcher, and Henry is just a normal human being. While Geralt easily takes on multiple enemies at once, using his magical signs, swinging his majestic swords, and all the bombs at his disposal to quickly get rid of any enemy he comes across, Henry finds himself in mortal danger during every single fight, where even the shortest lapse in concentration could end in a lethal blow and a game over screen. The absence of a regular quick-save system only heightens the danger, leaving you exposed to possibly losing an hour of progress to a mingy wolf or a skinny bandit. In The Witcher, nights aren't all that different from the daytime. The danger doesn't become more or less apparent, and Geralt will always be as strong as he is. Henry, however, fears the night, and rightfully so. When the sun goes down, the woods are dark and moody. You only have a torch to light the path, which creates an eerie feeling, even more so because of the wonderful sound design. It's the Blair Witch Project effect, where what you can't see but can only hear is way scarier than an actual monster. As Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 progresses, so do the enemies. Later on in the game, you get to fight enemy soldiers with pistols and other weapons, but showing you that would be spoiling a part of the game that is best experienced on your own. And that is precisely where The Witcher and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 are pretty similar. The world building and political intrigue initially happens in the background. You get the broad strokes and its major players, but from there on out, you organically get fed more and more information about the conflict and how it all could possibly impact you. Henry and Geralt are of course extremely different protagonists, but their personal stakes in these wars get heightened for each of them. In Henry's case, it's a tale for revenge, since his parents were one of the many victims of the conflict, while in Geralt's case, it's more of a nuisance in the search for his adopted daughter. Both of them get dropped in the middle of these ongoing conflicts and have to try and maneuver their way through them while trying to complete their personal quests. And the brilliant level design in both games, especially in the first acts, make sure you never forget what that quest actually is. In The Witcher, the majestic, independent city of Novigrad always looms in the north. You can of course see it on the map, but the closer you get to it, the more you realize civilization is creeping in on the wilderness. You'll notice an influx of NPCs by the river, loud noises, and more soldiers and buildings leading up to the city. It's something you're automatically drawn to as a player, right from the get-go, but have no business yet until well into Act 1. It's the perfect carrot and stick approach that makes you wonder what Novigrad actually looks like, because it's always present in the distance. Meanwhile, in Act 1 of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, your main objective, or so it seems, is to get inside Trotsky Castle to deliver the letter. Now, the map is designed so the castle is on a hill at the highest point of the area. This makes it so that almost everywhere Henry travels on the map, unless you're in the deep south or in the woods, the castle is always visible. Again, brilliant carrot and stick design that makes you never forget about your main objective, no matter what other adventures you get into along the way. In The Witcher, once you finally get to Novigrad, it's a location like you've never seen before in a game. The city is brimming with life, NPCs are everywhere, going along their daily business with stores, blacksmiths, guards and quests everywhere. It makes you feel like you're actually in a crowded metropolis with something to see and do at every corner, and the immersion gets elevated to a whole nother level. It's one of the most carefully and perfectly crafted cities in all of gaming history, and even though it's a decade old by now, it still fills me with awe whenever Geralt is simply walking around. KCD2 also has a beautiful, brilliantly designed city called Kuttenberg, made up out of the same wonderful aspects as Novigrad. The architecture and NPCs make you feel like someone could actually live here and you're just traveling through. I don't want to show you too much of the city because it's in a later part of the game and best experienced on your own, but I will say that although it might look a little bit less dense than Novigrad, it's absolutely filled to the brim with interesting sights, vendors, and quests. This goes for both the exteriors as well as the interiors. What Warhorse Studios created here is not just historically accurate, but from a gameplay perspective, also incredibly awe-inspiring. Especially if your Henry has some thieving skills under his belt, because at that point, the city of Kuttenberg becomes your oyster. There are of course many other elements that The Witcher 3 and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 have in common, like the emphasis on alchemy, weapons and equipment, or even the use of multiple giant maps you get to fully explore. But there's one more thing I want to highlight here, and it's a bit of a weird one. I don't know if you remember this, but a decade ago, before everything was called woke, racist, phobic this or DEI that, and you were still allowed to just like things for what they are without one group or the other coming after you, some people actually tried to boycott The Witcher 3. I know it sounds ridiculous in hindsight, especially knowing what a success the game became, but back then, a few people were really upset. Not because Geralt was a white male protagonist or because one of the first NPCs you met was gay, but simply because the game got a bit of a graphical downgrade from the first gameplay trailer they showed. This of course couldn't stand, so the battalion was up in arms, ready to completely cancel this Eurotrash blight of a game, until they played it and quickly disappeared. That ridiculous boycott had the same magical effect as the one Hogwarts Legacy had to deal with, as in both games became a huge success and nobody cared about the lunatics screeching on either side. The same thing is happening right here, where some people are desperately trying to make you believe that Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is filled with DEI debauchery and there are gay orgies in every cutscene. The game sold 1 million copies in only 24 hours and hit a 250k concurrent player peak on Steam. So it's not only a huge success, but also completely obliterated the records of the first game. The irony of it all is that last time, in 2018, the other side tried to boycott the original Kingdom Come Deliverance for equally stupid reasons. Because it didn't feature any people of color, multiple outlets refused to cover on it.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
Now, before you get angry, whatever side you're on, I think it's perfectly fine and even necessary to call out bad practices in games, or the things surrounding them. But at least pick your battles wisely, before you become the boy who cried wolf. Because at that point, your arguments, no matter how valid they might be or apply to other games, simply get flushed down the drain with nonsense, which benefits absolutely no one. Gaming is a special medium that should bring people together and not tear them apart because of some weird political agenda on one side or rage-bait engagement on the other.
Why can't we all just get along?
Anyway, if you disagree, fuck you. Enough of that. Because there's one more game Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 reminds me of. Just like The Witcher 3, I presume Red Dead Redemption 2 can be found on a lot of people's top games of all time lists. Rightfully so, because the tale of Arthur Morgan is one of the most beautiful stories ever told, in such an immersive and interactive way that it's my favorite Western of all time, and that's including movies. What Rockstar created here is practically impossible to surpass, and I doubt anything will anytime soon, but in certain ways, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 comes mighty close. There were 3 things that made Red Dead 2 stand out amongst its competitors, and the reason why it's still being revered to this day. The first one we already touched upon, and that is its wonderful story. Now, without spoiling anything, what I want to highlight here is how personal it is. Arthur Morgan isn't some mythical hero who can easily take on everyone. It's a nuanced story about a man who's known loss and forged a deep connection to the people he's traveling with. It's a story about friendship, betrayal, and losing grip on life. When it inevitably all falls apart, it's the people around us that lift us back up and get us back in the saddle, so to speak. And that is precisely what makes Red Dead Redemption 2 so incredibly special, because its cast of supporting characters is not just there to serve your missions or stuff to do, but each and every one of them has their own character arc. Just like Arthur himself, their personalities develop over the course of the game, and you can see them actually change as people. Relationships evolve organically, just like they would in real life. People lose touch, they die, become enemies, or grow closer to each other. Now, I'm not gonna pretend that KCD 2 is on that same level, because let's be honest here, that's nearly impossible and nothing probably ever will. But it did genuinely and pleasantly surprise me how excellent the character development is in this game. Not just for Henry, but also for the supporting cast.
Audentes, fortuna, iuvat!
A character like Hans, who essentially starts off as a narcissistic asshole in the first game, is not easy to make relatable, let alone likable, but they not only did it, but made sure he became one of the most interesting characters in both games. It's someone everyone easily roots for. Henry himself isn't some gunslinging, cool, relatable cowboy, but starts out as a bit of a simpleton, which makes it even more fun when you see him grow, both mentally and physically. He is the player, for better and for worse, which makes it easy to feel for him. However, what makes these two games the most comparable are the NPC interactions. Rockstar games, and especially Red Dead 2, are known for their excellent AI, where NPCs actually remember you and what you did before. While traveling the vast map, you can run into some of them who are in trouble and then choose to help them out. And then when you run into them again later on in a town or city, they'll comment on it and often reward you. The whole map is filled with these seemingly organic situations where various NPCs get themselves into a pickle and need your help. Sometimes you even run into some of them that don't need anything but just want to talk to you or are acting rather strange. I'm thinking about the secret time traveler, for instance, the vampire you can come across in Saint Denis, or that awful sibling couple that drugs you and then... well, never mind. These are all great and such unexpected interactions that make it seem like the world is alive and you're the only player who's ever going to witness this. KCD 2 mirrors these wonderful NPC interactions to a T and sometimes even does them better. Sure, you run into a lot of citizens who are in trouble and just need you to save them from a couple of bandits, but there are also some who come back to haunt or reward you later on. They feel unique, like something only you come across in your playthrough. For instance, I met this trader who was robbed and left naked and tied up on the side of the road. He didn't just need me to free him, but also to provide him with some clothes to wear. There's Yarda the Great, who will stop you and as his lackey tell you that he's the best fist fighter around, until you beat the crap out of him, of course. But one of the most interesting interactions I've ever had in a game was with this mysterious old lady who I met on a cold dark night. She seemed to know me and everything that had happened before, but the more I talked with her, the more I realized that I was talking to the Grim Reaper. It's interactions like this that can elevate a game's immersion from being great to excellent. And it's not just the player interactions with NPCs that makes these games great, but also their individual AI. Arriving in a new town in Red Dead 2 always had that possibility of seeing two of them go at it without you ever doing anything. The same thing can happen in KCD 2, like right here where I accidentally stumbled upon two drunk idiots going at each other. Moving away and returning a little while later lets you see the actual aftermath of the fight, signifying that the world moves on without you being even present there. In general, the NPCs in KCD 2 lead their own lives. They work, eat, sleep, talk to each other, and get into fights. Another thing that these beautiful games have in common is the fantastic environmental storytelling. Whether you accidentally find numerous gravesites of a creepy and talented serial killer when you're playing as Arthur, or come upon the skeleton of an ancient knight guarding the last remains of a long-forgotten armor as Henry, it makes the worlds these games take place in feel like they're being lived in, and that goes such a long way towards the brilliant immersion they both offer. And speaking of immersion, the same goes of course for the immersive sim aspects both games have, where Arthur and Henry also need to sleep, eat, and can't drink too much or they get drunk as hell. There was this one quest in KCD 2 where Henry gets drunk with a couple of humans, but when the quest was over, he didn't suddenly magically sober up. So when I stumbled upon a den of wolves, I had to drunkenly fight them and desperately try to stay alive. These elements all make for such original and organic situations that your playthrough is never the same as the one of your friends, and it becomes a true water cooler game, where even talking about it is so much fun. Hell, there's even this video on Twitter that showcases what happens if you drop stuff from your inventory in front of the NPCs. It turns out that they actually pick it up and put it in their own inventories. It's truly amazing stuff like this that only Red Dead 2 and now KCD 2 excel in. There are of course a lot more comparisons, like the horses you can find in Red Dead 2 and KCD 2, or the city of Saint Denis that, just like Novigrad or Gutenberg, feels like people actually live there. But ultimately, whether you play as Geralt, Arthur, or Henry, all three of these games are incredibly special and something everyone should experience at one point or another. Maybe you won't enjoy them as much as I did, and that's perfectly fine, because to be fair, they are games you need to be in the mood for. You need to be able to take your time with them, because you get as much back as you put into them. At the end of the day, it's all about what you personally enjoy. Once or twice a year, I like playing through a typical Ubisoft open world template game, a straight up high octane first person shooter, a story heavy branching CRPG, or a third person action adventure that maybe only takes 12 hours to complete. All these genres have greatness in them. Hell, sometimes a fun but simple gameplay loop is all it takes to get completely hooked and have a game stand out from the crowd to become one of your favorites. But every once in a while, you get a pure gem. A game that does everything right for you and rivals the best movies you've ever seen or books you've ever read. These are the special games that make you never forget the wonderful time you spent with them, no matter how many hours that might be. And to me, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is one of those experiences. It's all I'm thinking about all day long and all I want to do whenever I have a moment to spare. Again, like I mentioned at the start, it's all subjective of course, but to me, the tale of Henry and the simple quest to get his sword back is one of extreme heights and no lows. It's a beautifully immersive, emotive, character-driven, action-heavy, choice and consequence-based hardcore RPG that I'd recommend to anyone who's even remotely interested. I'm very curious to hear what you think and if you agree or disagree and why. Let me know down in the comments, because to me, KCD 2 effortlessly joins the ranks of Baldur's Gate 2, The Witcher 3, and Red Dead Redemption 2 in becoming one of my favorites of all time. Now luckily, that doesn't mean there's not room for more. Which brings us to next week, because that other first-person Bethesda-inspired medieval setting RPG just released, Avowed, has finally arrived and I'm dying to try it out for myself. Even more so because I recently also replayed through Pillars of Eternity 2, and I'm very curious to see how that one compares to its spiritual, or in this case, actual successor. No matter what happens, it's an RPG heavy month, and I couldn't be happier. I hope. So until next week, have a great time, my friends.